y'all doing this morning? Good, good. It's wonderful to be with you. I did work at Southwest. It was a fantastic place to work. I was there from 88 to 98. I'll tell you more about that in just a bit. And I did recently come out with a book, Culturetopia. And Culturetopia is just a word that I made up. I was looking for a word that when you Google it, you got no hits. So there you go. An original internet word for you right there. Funnily enough, I was in San Francisco doing this talk, and I got in a cab to go back to the airport, and the cab driver said, what was your speech about? I go, it was Culturetopia. He goes, oh, I listen to that every day. And I was like, what do you mean you listen to it every day? It turns out that National Public Radio now has an obscure broadcast that they call Culturetopia, but I got the URL and I got the trademark, so I don't really care. That's fine with me. Today, I'm going to cover just three main topics. I don't have a lot of time with you. We'll be done on time at 12:30. But I'm going to give you a little background on Southwest for those who may not be as familiar with Southwest. I'm going to talk about what really drives performance from my perspective in this idea of culture and how it impacts performance. And then we'll talk about employee accountability and engagement at the end. And then I have a short DVD I'll show you right before we wrap up and one closing comment. But before we get started, I find it very useful to get in alignment with the audience. And I do that with a really quick audience interaction technique. It's very simple. It's a little bit athletic, so you might have to loosen up. All right. It's called a power clap. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, power clap. I'm going to bring my hands together just like that. Your job is to see if you can bring your hands together at exactly the same time. So just loosen up, put your drinks down. Might have to loosen up. I promise this is going to feel good. I promise you, this is going to warm us up. Are you ready? This is such a quiet group. Are you ready? All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, power clap. I love that reverberation. That's awesome. That was pretty good. Y'all are really, really tight this morning. That's awesome. Let's try it again. 1, 2, 3, power clap. Whew. That felt really good. Last time. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, power clap. 2 power claps. Thank you. Thank you very much. I feel better already. And if that doesn't draw people in, nothing will. So let's keep going. The Southwest Effect, successful practice of a market leader. Let's talk a little bit about Southwest. Southwest kind of emerged, right? Because in the late 60s, early 70s, when they were trying to form this airline, a lot of the other major airlines were trying to put legal restrictions on them and really to try to keep them from getting their certificate to fly. But Southwest said, you know what, we want to create an airline that attracts all consumers. Southwest never tried to compete with other airlines. They were trying to compete with the bus and the car. They wanted to get people out of the bus, out of the car, and onto airplanes, and they did. And the only way you can do that is to be very efficient and to have very low cost. Consumers, and particularly corporate travel departments, began to become very price sensitive, and so it played to the Southwest effect. The consumers began to redefine quality in terms of reliability and on time and cost. And then after about 20 years, Southwest kind of gained national attention by jumping into the California market and really dominating in a really short period of time. And then even during the Gulf War, they began to expand while other companies shrank. As a matter of fact, I was manager of customer service training in 1991 when the Desert Storm broke out. And Herb Kelleher, who was the CEO, chairman of the board, and president of Southwest at the time, he called a meeting of all the employee events committees in all the training departments. And he said, we're going to have more parties and more training this year than we've ever had. My budget for customer service training got doubled. My friends at other carriers, they were furloughed. I mean, it was really sad. But Southwest Airlines in 1991 made $26 million. Their profit margin was 0.7 customers per flight. Do you think that was a pretty good investment of dollars? You bet it was. Because when we're investing in employees, they're investing in the customer, and it works. But it's counterintuitive, right? Counterintuitive, but Herb had an ability to do that. Let's keep going. Continued growth. Since Southwest has grown to encompass all regions of the U.S., even September 11, other airlines were cutting, and Southwest has grown 4 to 5% a year since then. They've been profitable for 40 years in a row in an industry that struggles, as you guys know. And then the U.S. domestic market, they're the first, the largest in passenger miles flown, passengers flown, and largest in flights per day. So you get a good sense for who they are as an organization. Pretty impressive. The Department of Transportation said that it's the most successful, Fortune magazine said the most successful airline in history. All right. Here's the Southwest effect, and I wish I'd have coined that phrase, but it really was the Department of Transportation that said Southwest is having a profound effect on the industry. It's much lower operating cost are making it dominant in the airline today. And so it's just kind of changed the game. And just to give you an idea of how efficient they are, for every airplane that Southwest has, they have about half as many employees as the other majors. Right? So operating equipment to employee ratio is about a half. The average Southwest jet sits on the ground about 18 to 25 minutes. The closest competitor is about an hour in terms of bags off, people off, freight off, bags on, people on, freight on. And they can do that in about 18 to 25 minutes. So if you had a cab company and you're competing against a cab company that had one driver and waited 18 minutes and you have two drivers waiting an hour, who's going to win that? It's apples and oranges. It's just a different operating model. Not that the other operating models are not good, they're just not as efficient as Southwest. So most loyal Southwest customers would say they have low cost, which they do. They have efficient operations. They are so lean. They have to operate with such efficiency to be profitable. They have reliable service. So as much as any other carrier, you're going to get there safely on time with your bags. And then they have fun and enthusiastic employees. I'll talk more about that in a second. And then they have customer-friendly service. So it gives you a little taste of who Southwest is and kind of how they operate and kind of where they've been. But really, you have to ask, what's driving this performance? Right? What really does drive performance? And that's what the book Culturetopia is about, is how do we create this space where there's high performance and high fulfillment all in the same space? So if you think about it, employees or anybody in a community, when there's high performance and high fulfillment in any relationship, what are the attitudes and behaviors of those people? Positive, fun, enthusiastic, energetic, on time, right? But that's not how life works. You sometimes will get high performance, low fulfillment. Somebody pushes somebody's fairness button, now I'm not as happy as I once was. What are the attitudes and behaviors of those people? They can get really grumpy, can't they? And they're good recruiters. They should be in HR. Come to the dark side, right? And if I stay here long enough, I'll slide down to low performance, low fulfillment. And that's a dangerous place to be. And I go into hundreds of companies every year, and I see these people just trading hours for dollars, and they're struggling because they're in this disengaged mindset, this low performance, low fulfillment mindset. Now be careful, there's one other quadrant, that's low performance, high fulfillment. That might be your new hire, so just be careful with that. At Southwest, we called them ignorance on fire. Hey, I got the job, I just don't know what I'm doing yet, all right? So we want to create this space, and it's asking the question of what really drives performance. So when I say the word performance, I'm not talking about just performance from a financial standpoint, I'm talking about high performance and high fulfillment. Because certainly that's what Southwest has created, a place where there's high performance and high fulfillment. We meet needs in employees that aren't being met anywhere else, and then in turn, they meet needs for customers that aren't being met anywhere else. This idea of high performance. But everywhere I go, and it doesn't matter, any service industry especially, performance is really a byproduct of how well we do this. And there's a fancy term for this that I didn't invent. It's called relational coordination. Actually, a lady named Jody Hoffer-Guttel, she teaches at Brandeis University, and she began to study this idea of relational coordination and the impact of relational coordination on performance. And she got the idea when she was delivering her first child. She noticed this amazing relational coordination between doctors, nursing, administration, labs, transport, pharmacy, all these different departments that had to have this incredible relational coordination for there to be efficient and safe and healthy delivery. Kind of like an airline, right? There's incredible relational coordination that has to happen for you to be that efficient, right? And then she began to study the legal environment. She found the same relationship between attorneys, paralegals, secretaries, administration. I mean, client satisfaction went up, billing errors went down. The higher the relational coordination, the better the performance. And then she said, I wonder if I can prove it in aviation. She was on the National Aviation Board, and she's fascinated with aviation. And I had the pleasure of touring with Jody, and we did about 17 presentations over about an 18-month period. And it was just fun and fantastic to work with her. And she began to study American Airlines at Boston's Logan Airport. The manager there said, if you want to study an airline, the American manager said, if you want to study an airline that's got great relational coordination, you should study Southwest. She ended up studying Southwest and named her research the Southwest Airlines way, how to use the power of relationships to achieve high performance, right? And basically, here's what Jody found. There's two types of tension every day. There's people tension, and people tension is the kind of tension that gets in the way of us doing our best work. Task tension is what drives performance. So if I can keep people tension low, I can focus all my energy on task, right? And here's what she found. If you have high people tension, you're gonna have low task tension. You ever see somebody going half speed? Don't nudge anybody, that's you, right? There's a reason people go half speed. I was working with a lady down in Austin, Texas. She's the VP of HR for this company there. And I said, how many people work here? She said, about half. I thought that was a really good answer. Depending on how much tension's going on, depending on how much gossip there is, depending on how many fairness buttons got pushed, we got about half of them going. If I could encourage you to do anything else leaving here today, just go back and try to remove the tension that's there. Try to put things in place that are going to lower people's tension so they can get focused on getting the job done. Same thing's true at home, right? If I bring a lot of tension home with me, guess what? House doesn't work so well. But if I can keep tension low, everything works better. My wife and daughter were doing some math facts. My daughter's 13. And they're studying math, and my daughter's like me. She's not into the math that much. And they were just at each other. And I, on that particular day, was having a good day because I thought of this. I said, my job is to lower the tension. I got to change the conversation. So I went and I said, let's put the math facts away. It's a beautiful afternoon. Let's go and take a walk. So we saddle up the Beagle. We got my son, and that's right, in Texas, you saddle up the Beagle. And we took a little walk. We have a pond by our house. We walked around there and played with the ducks, and then we came back. My daughter got that work done in 10 minutes, no help. We just removed the tension, right? We changed the conversation, and now she's able to focus. Where right now do you have to have a conversation to remove the tension? Right? It works. Southwest routinely. You'll see the ramp agents out there, man, they'll attack that plane. 4 of them are bags off people, off radar, bags on people. Then after that, you'll see them playing dominoes in the break room or shooting baskets or lifting weights together. It's just a common practice. We want to meet needs in employees that aren't being met anywhere else, right? They're not going to get written up for that. They're going to you'll probably have the supervisor right there spotting them because we want to create this environment where people are reducing stress and staying focused on the customer. All right. So here's what Jody found. If I can keep people tension low, we can get 95% of our energy on customer service, on getting the job done, on task completion. All right, so teamwork really is what's going to drive the performance, how well we relate to each other, our vendors, our suppliers, our boss, our employees, right, our customers. And to do that, we have to create an environment where it's facilitating this relational coordination. And this is tough. Culture's tricky. It really is, and it goes in cycles, and you might be at any point in any one of your relationships or any part of your business. You could be at any point of this at the same time, just at different cycles. There's a startup moment in a new relationship. There's lots of risks that have to be taken. In a sales relationship, you got to put yourself out there. There's a startup mode, a startup culture that involves a lot of risk taking. But the reality is you guys have been building, recruiting, and managing for a long time. You hit this maturity phase. This is where there's heated competition, and you're saying, what are the new products? What's the new strategy? And so you come to a conference like this, and you go to an exhibit hall, and you have, great sponsors, right? And they're out here promoting these new ideas. What's next, right? So we want to pause for just a minute. And decline might not be the right word. It might just be pause. And let's get ourselves into the learning mindset. Let's not lose our edge. Can we learn our way to the next level? Right, Southwest is really good at this. The entire American Airlines industry said, let's charge for bags. What did Southwest say? Bags fly free. It was a brilliant move because there's a sense of fair play about that. I got on a carrier the other night, not Southwest, and I bet you they plane checked about 20 bags. Those flight attendants were so frustrated. Their tension was through the roof. They weren't even available to give good service because they were so frustrated. And the flight attendants were frustrated. The ramp agents were frustrated because they had to carry those bags up and down those stairs. And the customers have figured it out. If I carry it through security, they won't charge me. I'll just plane check it, right? We've created a system that creates frustration. And right? I got on a flight on Southwest on Halloween. I opened up the overhead bin. The flight attendant was in there. She said, boo, right? Not a lot of stress on that flight. We had a good time, actually, because she was available to pay attention to the customer because you can check a couple bags. Let's charge change fees. I got on my computer. I changed a flight. They charged me $200. There's no sense of fair play about that. I did the work. I should get a credit. On Southwest, you can change your flight. You can even no-show. You still get to retain those funds to use it for another flight in the future. There's a sense of fair play about that. Let's operate out of abundance, not out of scarcity. And that way we'll free everybody up to really serve. That's what we want to be able to do. We want to free people up. Heck, even personally, you have to make adjustments. I found out that I'm not a very good father. I have an 8-year-old son, but when he was around 5, he was having these fits of emotion, and he couldn't really control himself and work himself through the aggression, really. And so I have a choice. I can do like my dad did. I can create a nice fear base and make sure he complies. My dad was military, and that's just the way it was. In our house, we didn't say what, yeah, huh, or why. My brothers and I, we just said yes, sir. And he didn't have to call you twice. And I'm thankful for my upbringing. But for me, not so much my brothers, but for me, it was fearful. And my son's real sensitive. He's the biggest one and the most sensitive one, just like I was. And he's so sensitive. So I want to create a love base. I don't want to create a fear base. So I went and talked to a guy. And this guy, a psychologist, he gave me these books to read, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, How to Listen So Kids Will Talk. It was fantastic material. Ideas I wouldn't have thought about in a million years. Just absolutely incredible. The Hair-Raising Joys of Raising Boys, that's another one that was really good for me. But he gave me a challenge. He said, I want you to count how many times you say no to your son every day. Man, I lost track by noon. I did not realize the negative contingencies I was putting on him. Dad, can I do this? No, because you haven't. And it was frustrating him. And he was acting out on it. So now he gets lots of yeses. Dad, can I do this? You sure can, son. As soon as you get your room cleaned up, come on, I'll help you. It's totally changed the conversation. It's taken all that stress out of there. It's lowered the tension so that we can focus on what's really important. All right? Where do we need to change the conversation? Then it occurred to me, how many times do we say no to our customers? How many times do we say no to our employees? How many times do we say no to our boss? How many times do we say no to ourselves? What if we could just get to yes? What if we could just find people doing things right instead of always looking for what's going wrong? And it changes the way we look at things. It shifts the mindset. One of the ideas, I just want to share it with you because I thought it would never work in a million years. One of the ideas that I read in the book was when he's having this emotional fit, just to say, can you draw me a picture about how you're feeling? I'm thinking that will never work, never work. So Jay, he throws a fit. And I said, son, can you draw me a picture about how you're feeling? He said, yes. I was like, okay. And he's like, that's how I feel, Dad. Just like a big heart with a crack in it. And I'm like, oh, man. Son, I had no idea you felt this way. That must really hurt. It does. It's totally changed the conversation, right? It's opened us up. I can see some of you now, you're wanting to go make a phone call. I love you, son. I'm sorry. Guys, let me just put a disclaimer out here. This stuff's easy to teach. It's hard to do. It is. I blow it all the time because I feel like beating him. I do. But I blow it all the time. They say if you can't do it, you teach it. If you can't teach it, you write about it. So you know where I am, right? I'm a humble communicator. That's all I am. So let's get to this space, and it takes us full circle because the change cultures takes us right back to the risk. I'm going to give you 2 slides on change because I think it's so important that we address this, because if we don't keep the tension low, we don't get the stress removed, it's going to be impossible for us to maintain these levels of service, the levels of employee engagement. So at Southwest, they worked very hard on removing this tension, and they made lots of changes to try to make sure that we stay in front of and on top of the issues. So change is, actually I'm going to give you 1 slide. Change is hard because we like to stay in comfort zones. If I ask you all to switch tables right now, you'd all be grumpy. As a matter of fact, some of you would just flat out resist. You say, I'm not moving. There's no way I'm moving. That's a stupid training game. I'm not going to do it. Right? And that's just the way people, I know, right? But the difference between the comfort zone and the resistance is what creates the tension. And we already know that the tension is what gets in the way of us providing great service. It gets in the way of employee engagement and employee morale. So we want to try to close the gap. The only way you can close the gap is to move through the process. You can't go backwards. So once the change happens, the best thing we can do is to get back into trial and error, even though it's confusing. I want to try to get everyone moving through. So at Southwest, we put incentives in place. The faster we move through the change, you're rewarded, right? You're encouraged. We're going to embrace and support and celebrate the people who are moving through the change, right? So many times, like, I know we can't help it. I know this is a drag, but we got to do it. I can't tell you the supervisors and managers I hear say that kind of stuff. I'm like, you're shooting yourself in the foot with that. You got to pull people through with you because you can't go backwards. And that's the only way you get back to renewal. I don't think the people in this room that'll be the most successful, I don't think you'll be doing what other people do better. I think you'll be doing what other people aren't willing to do. What are you willing to do that other people are unable or unwilling to do to move through? did some work with a dental practice, and we did some surveys, and overwhelmingly, the most important thing to their customers was convenience. They wanted evening hours, they wanted weekend hours, right? And we discovered that sometimes for us to give great service, we have to be inconvenienced so that other people can have convenience. And they put in some weekend hours and some later hours, and man, their practice is thriving because they paid attention to what the customer really wants. Right? They did some things that other people are unwilling or unable to do. Okay? Change is inconvenient, even when it's for the better. This is tricky because change creates stress. It does. And if you look at any definition of stress, it's Hans Selye, he does a lot of work here. He says it's a non-specific response of the body to any demand made upon it, meaning the stress that you're experiencing is going to work itself out one way or another. And so we want to find ways of reducing that stress for the employee group, for ourselves, and that's why we put this in a customer service discussion, because if I'm stressed out, I'm not available, right? I'm going to have to lower my tension so that I am available to give great service or to help other people lower their tension. I mean, that's the whole idea of inspiration, isn't it? You know what the word inspire means? It's a Latin word. It just means to breathe. When you breathe, you inspire. When you do not breathe, you expire. Very good. You ever seen somebody and they're so down, it's like they have a foot on their chest and they can't breathe, and then you come alongside because you're available and you recognize it, and instead of saying, what's your problem, you say, hey, how can I help? And all of a sudden, you give them some money, or you give them a shoulder to cry on, or you give them some help, and all of a sudden you see them just fill up. They can breathe again. That's inspiration. What if we just did that? What if we just found people, just come alongside them and say, hey, how can I help? You're not being yourself today. What can I do for you? And all of a sudden you see this lifting. It's a pretty cool visual if you think about it. I coach these 8-year-old boys in basketball. And they're great. And I'll get right in their face. I said, there's nobody as good as you at what you do as you. And they're like, really? They just fill up, right? Because we're all starving for it. We would all have, I mean, how do you feel when someone comes alongside you and says, hey, I heard something good about you? How do you feel? Give me. It feels great, right? It's just a pattern of thinking and behaving that we have to get ourselves in. We are so busy getting so focused on the transactions that we forget we're in a relationship business. And we really are. And the people around us are starving for that attention. Southwest does a great job of meeting those needs, meeting needs in employees that aren't being met anywhere else, finding people doing things right. That's a key driver of what we do. I was manager of customer service training, and then I thought I could do what y'all do. I became manager of customer service for Los Angeles International Airport. That's a bad job, by the way. You don't want that. And I stayed there exactly 1 year, and I found out I'm not an airport manager. I am a people developer, and I transferred back into our leadership development center where we did programs just like this. We called it the University for People. But one of the primary things that we did, and we spent a lot of discretionary training dollars on frontline supervisor development. And to a large degree, it was how to find people doing things right, reinforcing the behavior that you want repeated, finding those behaviors that predict success, and then rewarding those with recognition and praise. It's a key driver of performance. All right, let's keep going. And to make sure this happens, there's got to be a value system set in place that says this is who we are. This is how we operate. Most of us have this. Some of us have it in formal statement. Southwest has what they call a vision statement. It was created back in the early 80s. I'll share it with you in just a sec. But it's who we say we are. If you just want to make money, that's fine, but it's going to create a different kind of culture, right? And it's probably not going to facilitate the relational coordination that you want if you want to have this type of high-performance, high-fulfillment culture. Southwest, however, wanted to have both. They wanted to be profitable, but they wanted to create an environment where everybody wanted to be in this state of high performance and high fulfillment. Let me share their vision statement with you just to give you an idea of where they're coming from. And it's really a brand promise that they make. And they make it in 3 different areas. The first is to the customer. Dedication to the highest quality of customer service with warmth, friendliness, individual pride, and company spirit. That's a pretty tight statement about how you want to treat your customer. But we can't stop there. We want to use it in the interview process. We want to use it in the orientation process. We want to use it in the training process, in the probation period, and we want to manage to it ongoing. So you would frequently see this statement professionally framed and hanging in the offices at Southwest, because routinely we would go back to this and say, this is who we are. This is the promise we make to our customer. So we have to know what company spirit means. At Southwest, company spirit means you have we had a couple of things. We had one rule that you just didn't talk bad about the company outside the four walls. You know what that creates? It creates a legacy. Right? I worked there from 88 to 98, so I've been gone a long time. I still do lots of projects with them because I'll work for tickets. And they're standby. I call them strand-by because you can never get on. But anyway, so I do lots of projects with them still. But ultimately, I get to enjoy the legacy of having worked there. And there's people who are starting there now, and they get to look back and go, wow, there's a cool legacy here. There's something here that we get to enjoy, and I get to look back on it, right? But that's because we protect it. We say, hey, this is important, right? And it's tough, especially when you have the mergers and all the kinds of things that happen. It's tough to protect that, but they do their best to do so. To have company spirit, we had a rule you didn't drink alcohol in uniform. It's a pretty good rule. So if you get on a plane and you're in logo wear, you're not going to be served a cocktail, especially if you're a pilot. You should not be drinking in uniform if you're a pilot. Individual pride, we show up on time. We wear a uniform of pride. We wear a name tag. That's how we introduce ourselves to our customer. We always restock our position. We always leave the next person coming in good shape. We're going to make sure that we do the little things to show pride. We show up in our position on time. Right? And to be warm and friendly. I was working in LA and I had a customer service agent say, I'm not paid to smile. It's not in my union contract. Southwest is about 86% unionized. A lot of people don't know that. And this lady says she's not paid to smile. Now, I was teaching this for 4 years, and then I became this manager of customer service. Do you think I'm obligated to address that? If I believe in this, I think I am. And so I did. I said, I don't know if you've seen it lately, but our vision statement says we're supposed to be warm and friendly. And to be warm and friendly at Southwest, you have to smile, you have to use the customer's name, you have to thank them for flying. We are paid to smile. I'll be letting the union rep know we had this conversation, right? Because it's inconsistent. I can't believe this and not smile. Oh, by the way, if you continue to not smile, you will be disqualified because attitude has got to be a performance criteria in a service business. It's got to be. I go into companies and I see these technically competent people destroying their team with their attitude, right? They're technically competent. We've got to build the case that attitude is a performance criteria. Can't stop there, though. To our employees, we're committed about a stable work environment. Southwest has not had a layoff. Equal opportunity for learning and personal growth. Right? There's classes like this going on every day at Southwest. Every day. There's a continual learning and development opportunities. Right? What happens when you're learning and developing? Guess what? Tension goes down. Focus on customer service goes up. So they're continually focusing on the learning and development. And creativity and innovation are encouraged for improving the effectiveness of Southwest. Has anybody here flown Southwest? A few of you? Yeah, okay, good. What are some of the fun, creative, innovative things they do just to connect with their customers? And I think in this region, it's more prevalent than some of the new regions, but for the most part, they do a pretty good job of being creative and innovative about how they interact, just to create the customer experience. What do? Just shout some things out. What have you seen? Yeah, they'll sing their in-flight safety briefing. It's really, really amazing. And there's one guy now who raps. He's a rapper. He raps his in-flight safety briefing. Go to YouTube, type in rapping flight attendant. This guy is brilliant. He's really good. But they'll sing their in-flight briefing to the tune of Beverly Hillbillies. They just do all kinds of funny things you don't expect. You know, they have a fast landing. They go, whoa. You know, they just do funny things. Put your tush in a cush so we can push. I mean, it's things you don't really expect, a little unorthodox. I was on a flight the other day. The lady said, our smoking section's out on the wing where we're showing Gone with the Wind. I mean, it's kind of corny, but it was funny. Kind of lightens up the mood. It reduces the tension because, as you know, airport operations and in-flight experiences are tense. There's a lot of stress. It's not like the old days. When I was there in the 90s, that was fun. It's harder now. I was on a flight coming out of John Wayne Airport, and that's Burbank, you know, that's all the rich people are. And they have a noise abatement law there, and some of you are probably familiar with that. So when you take off, you have to climb out, and you climb out pretty steep. You get to 3,000 feet, and they back those engines off, and it's quieter so they can cruise out of town. And when you're taking off like that, it's stressful. And this flight attendant, I guess she knew that it was stressful, and she was trying to do something to entertain the group. And she got the basket that they put the peanuts and the pretzels in, and she filled it up with peanuts and pretzels, and she put it in the aisleway. And when that plane took off, that gets pretty steep. That basket started to slide down the aisle. And she said, ladies and gentlemen, please grab your snacks as they go by. And I was like, that one. I mean, that's pretty creative to me. That plane didn't even think about the stress of climbing out. They were just trying to get those pretzels, right? I think we have some room to lighten it up. right? I saw something in San Antonio last year I've never seen, and I don't know even how she did it. But 5 o'clock flight, and if you know how hot it was in Texas last summer, it was smoking hot. It was probably 150 degrees on the tarmac. And I'm hot and I'm grumpy and I boarded late, and so I'm between these two bodybuilders, and I hate that. And at Southwest, it's just open seating. And I'm between, and everyone's hot and grumpy. The flight attendant comes out and she has a roll of toilet paper. And I'm thinking, oh, she's going to do the toilet paper races. Have you ever seen that? They'll give each side a roll of toilet paper, see who can get to the back the fastest without breaking it. That'll lighten up the mood. It will. But she didn't do that. She begins to unroll the toilet paper down the aisle. We're taxiing out for takeoff. She's unrolling toilet paper. I'm thinking, what's she going to do? I've never seen any flight attendant in 30 years of flying ever do this. And she gets on the intercom in the back alley and she says, ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to demonstrate how strong the flush is on our toilets. And I'm like, no way. I'm thinking there's no way that's going to work. She said 1, 2, 3. And they went right down the aisle. Now, I'm not saying y'all should flush toilet paper, but I will tell you that plane went from mad to glad just like that, right? Totally unexpected. I think that's pretty innovative. I think it's worth the cost of a roll of toilet paper just to lighten up a grumpy crowd. And she did. It was really amazing. I still don't know how she did it. But I think we have some room to lighten it up. We're in a serious business. We're in a stressful business. You're in a nonstop business. And it's just, I think, laughter's good medicine. Think about it. I mean, let's say there's a big party tonight, which I think there is. Everyone's going to be at the party. Who do you want to be around at the party? I was teaching this at Shepherd Air Force Base. One of the airmen said, the bartender. I said, that's not the answer. No, you want to be around positive, fun, energetic, enthusiastic, inspirational people. No one goes into a party and does this. Hey, an angry guy. Maybe he'll explode. You don't do that. Wow, she looks depressed. Sit with us. Ruin our night. Don't spend your social time around angry, depressed people, but I watch people go to work and spend half their wake life at work around angry, depressed people. Never do anything around it. They're just walking around stressed out, and they're not available to even recognize if someone else has a need. They're too busy and too consumed with their own. And I can't help anybody else. I can't give great service unless I'm able to get myself back to this place where I'm available. All right? And guys, I know there's real problems out there. I have not cornered the market on problems. I know there are. Matter of fact, if we all had 30 minutes to stand up here and tell each other our problems, after hearing everybody else's, you'd want to keep your own. All right? But all the more important then for us to take a step back and say, okay, how can I help? What can I do? Right? Because when you're serving others, it brings your tension down. It really does. And it brings your awareness up. And now we're available. Right? And that's what we want to do. We want to be available for each other. Funnest job I had at Southwest. When I left Los Angeles, they put me on a team, and they call us the J team. There was 4 people on the team. They call us the J team because all of our names started with J. Julie, Janine, Joey, and Jason. Our job was to research, design, and deliver system-wide customer service programs. And what I would do, I was assigned to ground operation. I would go into ground ops, and I'd find the employees with the best service records, the best uniform standards, the fewest cash errors, the best on-time performance, the most customer compliment letters, all those things that predict success. I would go and evaluate, and I'd try to find employees who are the best of the best. And there's one lady, she's a 35-year employee. She works at Houston Hobby. Her name's Carol, and she's famous there. She brings her A game to work every day. And Carol is a funny lady. She's tall, and she has different name tags because people call you different things at the airport. They'll say, hey, you. So she has a name tag that says, hey, you. I think that's funny. And she has one that says, oh, miss, because they always say, oh, miss. And so I said, I'm just going to go work with Carol for a day. And we were working the gate podium, and and she's just funny, and she's messing with people. I mean, she'll reach out and straighten a guy's tie or something just to interact. She just has a really, really fun way about her and real easy to be around. And then we look up, and we see a guy, he's my size, if not bigger, and he's in a dead sprint, man. This guy thinks he's late for his flight, and he's hustling. He comes up to Carol and says, hey, lady, do I have time to go to the bathroom? She said, I don't know. I've never timed you. And this guy got this slow grin on his face. And his day changed right there. I mean, he went from stressed to blessed right there. Just because somebody cared enough to surprise him, cared enough to reach out. And then he goes to the bathroom. He comes out. He's boarding the flight. She says, sir, by the way, you're a 3-minute bathroom guy. She timed him. I think that's pretty funny. He'll never forget Carol, I guarantee, because she changed her day just like that. I think we have some room to lighten it up. Even when things are bad, you can lighten it up, right? We had a pilot landed really hard. Have you ever been on a hard landing? I've been on lots of them, and they almost always go the same way. The pilot rocks it down, and then all of a sudden there's some screams, and there's this white knuckle moment. They're grabbing your leg or the armrest. And then there's this eerie silence that happens. In almost every flight, every time, it's just this eerie silence. Everyone's looking around like, God, what just happened? Or they're saying, let go of my knee, right? And the plane's taxiing in, and right in the middle of that eerie silence, the captain came on, and he said this. Ladies and gentlemen, that wasn't your fault, and that wasn't my fault. That was the asphalt. I thought that was pretty good. I thought that was a pretty good way to handle that. They went from mad to glad, just like that. Above all, let's treat each other with the same concern, respect, and caring attitude within the organization that we're expected to share externally with every customer. That's a pretty tight statement. And even if you don't have a formal statement, you can sit down with your team and just get some chart paper and just say, how do we want to work together? All right? I mean, we did that in our training team. We had 21 people at the University for People, and we sat down one day without our boss, and we just had some chart paper, said, okay, because we were in this kind of a funk. We weren't really enjoying the work like we should be enjoying the work, and we started to identify what's robbing us of our peace. And it happens even at Southwest. You have to recalibrate every now and then. You have to stop and say, okay, what do we need to be doing? And you know what we found out? That gossip was really robbing us of our peace. And not so much us gossiping as much as people coming into the Learning Center and sharing all their junk. And so we just put up some no gossip signs and we say, hey, we don't gossip here at the university. Immediately the workplace got better. And we had a positivity rule. And they would say stuff like this, Jason, you having a good day? I said, yeah, I'm having a good day. They're like, when are you gonna let your face know about it? Right? Just give you a little nudge. I get this game face on, I don't know why, I just get it on. Probably because I played sports and it's part of my intensity, I guess. I probably should have told you I was one of the best quarterbacks of all time in college football history. I went to New Mexico State. We won 10 games in 4 years. It was terrible. And I was a backup. That's how talented I was. I did the punt and kick coverage just so I could travel. I did have friends, though, at home games that would tease me. They would go, Jason, just to tease me. And one day the coach said, Young, get over here. And I put my helmet on. He said, go see what they want. It was terrible. It was bad. Yeah, famous. But I get this game face on, and I was doing this speech for a small coffee company called Starbucks, and I'm against one wall, and the lady who's introducing me is against the other wall. She's about to go up to introduce me, and she looks over at me, and she goes, apparently I'm over there looking like I'm mad at the world. I didn't even know I was doing it. So we're sending signals to each other every day. I mean, if you think about it, Janet L.C. did some research about what people notice in order of importance. She published it in her book called The 4-Minute Cell: Appearance, Facial Expression, Eye Contact, Body Movement, Personal Space, and Touch. And if we're gonna give great service, we gotta wake up this tool and we gotta encourage our employees. And we gotta spend 1 minute in the driveway before we walk in the building and say, how do I want my employees to see me? How do I want the customer to see me? I forget work, spend 1 minute in the driveway before you walk in the house. Right? And people get this kind of confused. We always say we want to see enthusiastic employees, but we don't really understand enthusiasm. It comes from a Greek word, entheos, same word we get theology. Enthusiasm is not a feeling, it's a belief. Do you believe in what you're doing? The ancient Greeks believed in the Greek gods, and then that translates to gods within is what entheos translates to. And they believed in so strongly, and they said if you believe in it so strongly that when you enter a room, other people can feel it. You ever see somebody who's enthusiastic? You can feel it. I don't always feel like getting up here. I don't. I did today. But it doesn't matter how I feel. I believe in what I'm talking about so much, I hope you can feel it. All right? I'm notorious for giving all my energy to you and leaving nothing in the tank for when I get home. But guess what? My family deserves to see an enthusiastic dad walk through the door. And it's hard sometimes. I have to spend 1 minute in the car and say, okay, how do I want them to see me when I walk in? All right? We have to go back and renew that every day. And remember, it's not about how I feel. It's about, do I believe in this? Do I believe in my employees? Do I believe in my relationships? So they can feel it. All right. So you're organized like this. Nothing wrong with being organized like that. But we don't want to think about it that way. And I've seen Herb Kelleher draw this in front of the board meetings and in front of shareholder meetings. I've seen him draw it on a chart paper where he flips it around. He said, you know what? It's the person who's touching the customer the most. That's the most important part of our business. So we want to create this environment. So as you get promoted down, your job, even if you're on the board of directors, is to put processes and systems in place that free you up to serve the customer. Things like no change fees and bags fly free. It frees us up to serve. Who's the most important part of the business? That's right, the customer. We want to keep that always at the top. Southwest always feels like they're a customer service company that just happen to be in the transportation business. And remember, the level of service you give externally is only going to be as good as the level you give internally. We can't destroy each other internally and expect that we're going to give great service externally. It just doesn't happen. A guy named Jan Carlsen, back in the early 80s, took over Scandinavian Air Systems. You guys might be familiar with his book, The Moment of Truth. And the press, he completely turned around that company. They were at a huge deficit, and they ended up making a profit the very next year. And they said, how'd you do it? He said, well, I focused on the moments of truth. And then they said, that's great, but what is a moment of truth? And he says, it's any time a customer comes into any contact with your business and gets an impression of your service. And he said, if we can focus on those moments of truth. So back then, it was the reservation experience. So when I called into the res line, now 90% of those are online, and you don't even have to talk to anybody at the airport. And then your ticket counter experience, and then your gate lounge experience, your in-flight experience, and certainly everything that you guys do play into this. And then your arrival experience. Did your bag show up? He said, if we can give wow service in all these areas, we're going to be able to turn this around, and they did. And so I would encourage you to think, what are your moments of truth? And how can I turn that into wow service? And this is hard. It's really tricky because I know you guys value this. I do. I sense it. The fact that you showed up and that you stayed at the end of a conference to hear a presentation, you probably have some really good intentions after being here for a few days. There's some things I'm going to go back. There's some things I've learned. I'm going to go back and I'm going to implement. But people are going to judge you, and your moment of truth happens when you actually do something. All right? So my perception, if I'm doing business with your brand, is going to be based on what I see you do. And that's going to be at that end user level. I can't see what your company intends to do, or even what you train, or what you tell people to do, or even what you say you value. I'm going to get a sense for what you value based on what I see employees do. All right? For example, I value health and fitness. I do. I intend to work out. I've run 1,000 miles sitting on my couch. Right? But the people who know and love me are only going to believe that I value health and fitness if they see me doing the work. Now, I will tell you, I had a physical, and my doctor said, you have high blood everything. Blood sugar, blood pressure, blood cholesterol. He said, I'll give you 3 months. If you don't turn it around, I'm going to put you on medication. So I've dropped about 15. I got a long way to go. Trust me. There's still about 40 pounds of me my wife's not legally married to. My brothers and I invented a new style of clothing. It's called turtleneck jeans. They just roll right up. It's terrible. So I can tell you now, people who know and love me can say, yep, he values it because he's doing the work. They can see evidence. So if you value customer service, is there evidence in your decision-making and the way your employees respond? This is hard because the moments of truth, there's so many different types of people that you have to meet. Right? It's kind of like my wife. I value her. So let's say that's my wife. She has her own sets of values, intentions, and behaviors. I have to do things to show care and concern for her, correct? From whose perspective? Hers. I have to give up my viewing point, and I have to take her view, give up my point of view and take her viewing point, and I have to meet her there. So it looks like this. She has a certain thing that she expects. I have to try to meet her there. If I really value her, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to try to change her into a copy of me. I'm going to try to understand where she's coming from. So I showed her this. And guys, ladies, don't show your spouse this or your partner this unless you really intend to do something. So I showed her this, and she said, I said, make me a list of 5 things. If I do them on a regular basis, will be a sign of care and concern. She didn't even blink. There you go. And I'm looking at this going, how can that be a sign? I mean, I'm hoping for Maverick season tickets. Now, that would be a good family time. Go to the basketball game or a boat. Get out on the lake together. That'd be great family time. You know what number 1 on her list is? Back rubs and foot massages. It's like, what? How can that be? And I said, that's 2. She said, nope, that's 1. Same category. I was like, what do you mean same category? What's the last thing I feel like doing tonight when I get home? Rubbing feet. I don't feel like doing that. I can tell you right now, I don't feel like doing it. But guess what? From her perspective, I'm gone a lot. And she wants physical presence and conversation. From my perspective, I'm gone a lot. And I want to be left alone. It's like that Darius Rucker song, all I want you to leave me is alone, right? Yeah, but guess what? Those are the best conversations we have. I don't feel like doing it now, but that'll be the best conversation we have all week. right? Because I give up my point of view and I try to understand where she's coming from. Physical presence conversation. All right. But it's tricky because you have other people. So for an airline, I might have a senior citizen. They have a certain need, and then I might have an unaccompanied minor. They have a need, and then I have a business traveler, and then I have a leisure traveler. And I have to understand where they're coming from, what their needs are, and I have to be willing to meet them there. We have to put policies and procedures in place that make it safe and protect them, right? And so that's why this is what makes it so complicated. It's challenging, all right? I would ask you to go back, identify what are our moments of truth, and how can we wow our customer at each point of there, right? Internally and externally, and realize that we're all so very different and we all have different expectations. When we go in the last part of this, I'll start to wrap this up. Let's be accountable to this. Whatever you've taken out of this conference, and let's go back and let's take full responsibility. So if you look up the definition in the dictionary or online, wordreference.com or something, you're going to see that accountability means that I'm willing to step into my current reality and take full responsibility. Right? If I do that, I become more empowered and my influence becomes very positive. So we want to step into our current reality. I feel more empowered, and now my influence becomes very positive. But it can happen either way. If I choose not to take responsibility and I start to blame everybody else for my current reality, it's their fault, it's because of you or them that I'm here. Now I become disempowered and my influence becomes very negative because I'm in this victim blame mindset. Have you ever seen somebody in victim blame mindset? It's debilitating. And so we try to encourage people, we don't want to blame. Let's take ownership. Let's step into this and say, what's my part in this? If you let somebody stay in victim blame mindset long enough, it starts to look like this. It's a risky slide, but I thought you'd like it. Yeah. Yeah, that's victim mentality right there. Low performance, low fulfillment, or we could say high performance, high fulfillment, right? So we want to move people into this space of high performance, high fulfillment. So the more responsibility I take, the more empowered I feel, the more positive my influence, because now I've taken ownership in my current reality. It gives me a sense of control about what I'm doing. And I don't know about you, that's the only way that I feel free. I showed my daughter this, and she was 11 at the time. I said, honey, just take a look at this. Tell me what you think it means. She said, well, Dad, it looks like if I take more responsibility, I get more freedom. I said, very good, honey. You know what she said? She goes, like a cell phone? I mean, bam, she was on it. She's smart. She turned 12, she got her phone, right? Because she proved that she could handle the responsibility. All right, we want to step into this. Another way of looking at it, you put a bell curve right on top of that. Marcus Buckingham's research, about 19% of the workforce, low performance, low fulfillment, right? Actively disengaged, about 55% trading hours for dollars, only about 26% actively engaged. We want to try to get people moving toward this high level of engagement. And sometimes it's just simple things. We did a survey. At the airport, we had 90 ticket agents, 12 SkyCaps, 10 supervisors, 3 station accountants. That was everybody inside the airport. That was my area. Then we had a ramp and ops guy, and then we had a station manager. And I just did a simple survey. I said, what are some non-monetary things that we could do that would be valuable? And they said, number one on the list was flexible work schedule. Right? They wanted to be able to do shift trades and buddy bid and be able to, I'll work a double for you, you work a double for me, or if I'm working the counter and I'd rather work the gate, we can do a position trade. And so we said, it can't be part of our labor agreement, but we could make that a privilege. And if you have no cashiers, good uniform standards at your position on time, wear your name tag, and no customer complaints, you could be eligible for that. I can't tell you how fast people were screaming in this direction just so they could be a part of this program that gave them ultimate flexibility. So we can get creative. One of our supervisors came up with a great idea. It's called a day free card. If you did all these things for a whole month, you could earn a day free card. That was a card you could hand in with a 48-hour notice and get off the schedule without pay. So it didn't cost us anything. And I told the union, if you grieve this because we don't backfill it with overtime, then we're going to have to stop. And they said, oh, no, the employees love this. All right? People scream in that way just so they could get a day free card. So we just want to get creative with it. Probably the funnest thing we did is I learned, and this is from a restaurant company that I learned this from. I've used it in healthcare. I've used it in a lot of different areas, but it worked great at the airport. We divided all the ticket agents up into teams of 5. We said the team of 5 that has the best score in these areas, they're going to win a prize. And I got $1,000 approved for this. That was nothing $1,000 was nothing compared to what we were paying overtime and double time and OJIs and all the stuff that we were trying to get better at. And they got excited about this contest. You know, they're going to win $200. They were excited. And so on the day we started the contest, everyone was like, well, Jason, who's on our team? I said, we're not going to tell you. And they freaked out, man. Put your name tag on. You might be on my team. Or they call each other at home. Are you really surfing? You better not. I mean, are you really sick? You better not be surfing. I mean, they don't care if they let me down. They just don't let each other down. Right? It was an amazing outcome. People scream in that direction just so they make sure they don't let each other down. It's fun. You can change up the criteria. You can change up the teams. You can do it, once a quarter or once every 6 months. But something that's going to drive people towards that optimal performance. One of the sure ways of driving them that way, and I'm almost done, one of the sure ways of driving people that way is getting people using their strengths. And Don Clifton wrote a book called Soar With Your Strengths. He did an experiment. Took some people who could read 90 words a minute, some people who could read 300 words a minute, gave them all a 6-week speed reading course. At the end of 6 weeks, the 90 words per minute only gained about marginally, 130, they went to 130 words. They went from being slow to still slow because they weren't focusing on their strength. The people who were strong readers and they enjoy reading, they can read a whole book in a weekend, a thick one with no pictures. They can visualize the character, they can follow the plot. They focused on their strength and they went to 1,500 words a minute. Yeah, that's exactly what Don Clifton said. He said, wow, we'd be better off pulling out of people the strengths that are there than trying to stuff into people things that aren't. You ever see somebody who is a customer service person versus somebody who tries to do customer service? Or have you ever seen somebody who is a trainer versus somebody who tries to do training? I am a trainer. I cannot not train. That's how I'm wired up. My wife doesn't like it very much. She's like, don't you train me. I can't help it. That's how you load the dishwasher, just like that. Gets more in, cleans it better. I'm just kidding. I talk tough in Orlando. Yeah, I tell people I run things in my house. I run the dishwasher. I run the vacuum. I fold the towels because they fit better. All right, but here's what a lot of us do. And here's what I would guard against. Got a great service person, let's make them a supervisor, right? You take them out of something they love and put them into something that's frustrating, all for those. That's what I did when I went to LA. Jason, we'll give you some cash, some stock options, and we'll set you up in a condo in Redondo. And that sounded great to my 26-year-old brain until I got there. I was like, what have I done to myself? I even called my old boss in training. I said, can I come back to training? She said, Jason, you made a year commitment. You got to honor your commitment. She wouldn't let me off the hook. And then she said, oh, by the way, you're the problem. I said, I'm not the problem. I got into it with my boss. I mean, we really did, and we squared off. And I probably would have lost my job had I not had that conversation with my old boss. And she said, you need to go talk to him. He's a fair manager. You just need to talk to him, let him know what you need. And so I went into his office, and I said, listen, I want to be able to do my best work for you, but I need you to do some things for me so I can perform better. He goes, I'm listening. I said, first of all, I need you to quit yelling at me, man. It really upsets me when you do, especially when you do it in front of employees. I said, just back off, right? If you'll encourage me, I can go all day for you, but just don't yell at me. He said, I thought you were a football player. I thought you liked that kind of motivation. I said, man, not that kind. All right, I was like, who are you, Woody Hayes? You're killing me here. And then I said, stay away from the ticket counters. You get everybody all riled up. They start having cash errors. Just let us run the shift. I mean, he was such a micromanager. He couldn't help himself. I mean, he would literally look over their shoulder, and they started having cash errors. And matter of fact, we had a lot of talented musicians who were just going to be ticket agents until they got their big break. And we had this one ticket agent named Tony. He wrote a song about this manager called How Can I Miss You If You Won't Go Away? It was a great song. And then I said, and I think this really was what melted the ice. I said, I need to spend more time with you to learn how this airport works. Because I could not write a schedule till overtime for my life. I mean, I was buried administratively. You know what he did right there on the spot? He said, you're great with employee relations. You're great with customer relations. I want you in the airport 100% of the time. He said, you love that stuff. You're great at that. He said, I'm going to get Noreen Vallone to be our administrative supervisor. She can do all the shift trades and all the bids, and she's great at that. She loves that. He put her in her strength, put me in my strength. I thrived after that. I still left at exactly 1 year because I'm not an airport manager. All right? I am a people developer. But I learned more from him the last 8 months than I would have ever learned had I never had that conversation. Turned out we had a really good relationship after the fact. All right? So just ask yourself, do I have the right people in the right spot using their strengths and abilities? At Southwest, it wasn't uncommon to have somebody who worked at a small airport transfer to a larger airport and struggle. And what do? You don't fire them because they struggle. You get them back into the environment where they're successful. Right? And Southwest is really good about evaluating talent and trying to get people using their strengths and abilities. All right, well, let's wrap it up. let's get the trust stuff figured out first. We got to be able to rely on each other. Let's make sure we're using our expertise. That means that we're focusing on strengths and abilities. So we want to hire for attitude, train for skill, but try to get people who are wired up to do that particular scope of work. Let's align ourselves to what we say we believe, and that might be a chart paper, or it might be a mission statement or a vision statement. How do I know people are committed? Because it's evident in their behavior. And then, obviously, this is what most of us are really good at. Let's measure it. And that's the accountability piece. If you want to look at it from a motivation standpoint, we want to raise task tension. We want to lower people tension. We want to start with the relationship first. Trust lowers people tension, and expertise raises the task tension. Then we can move into this buy-in phase where we're aligning ourselves, and people are committed because they're doing the behaviors, and everybody agrees on that. Teamwork's not about getting what you want. It's about committing to something bigger than yourself. All right? So we want to make sure we're all committed to whatever it is we all agree on. It may not be what I want. Our training team, they all voted that we should be there an hour early to meet and greet participants. I didn't vote for that. But guess what? The team voted for it. What do I have to do if I want to be on the team? Show up an hour early and meet and greet participants. Can I moan and complain about it in the break room? No, not if I want to be a good team member. I show up and I commit. All right? It's not about getting what you want. And then there's a high degree of motivation because measurement's pulling tasks through the roof, and accountability is really driving down the tension. And if we approach it that way, everything feels better. Right? Everything feels better. I don't know about you. I want to be like the team on the right. Well, let me show you this DVD. It's really short. It's a leadership theme, but I think you'll enjoy it. It's going to come at you a little slower than I have. Just think about the words and the music as it comes at you. I have one closing comment, and then I will be done. You guys have been fantastic. Thank you for coming, and thank you. I haven't seen one long blink yet. You guys have been great, so thank you for that. Let's play the DVD, and then I'll come back up and we'll have one closing remark. Good. Thank you. Thank you. Well, this has been absolutely a pleasure to be with you. Let me thank Duncan Brands. Thank you very much for the warm introduction and for being here and allowing me to be here. Let me close with one last thought for you. The first client I worked with when I left Southwest Airlines was Hawaiian Airlines. And through a series of events, I got hooked up with them, and actually their VP of HR came to visit our training center, and it was 2 days after I had left Southwest, and my old boss called and said, hey, this lady's coming to visit, and we're going to be on a retreat. Will you show her around the learning center? And I said, I sure will. Love to do it. So I did, and got a call 3 weeks later, said, hey, would you be willing to come here and partner with one of our local consultants and do some leadership training for us? And I said, yeah, I think I can go to Honolulu and do some training and development. That'd be fine. And over a period of about 5 years, I did several projects. I was able to go to all the islands, and it was just fantastic. But more importantly, as I became very close, I was very dear friends there. And every time I go and visit there, they greet me in a beautiful way. What do they say when you go to Hawaii? Aloha. But they don't just say aloha. If you're close with somebody, they will kiss cheeks, they'll embrace, and they'll give gifts. And it's a tradition that goes back to ancient Hawaii. And I asked a friend of mine there, her name's Kina Sai. She's an expert in the Hawaiian language. And I said, Kina, what's the deal with aloha? What's it mean? Where's it come from? She said, well, Jason, the ancient islanders, the Tahitian, Tongan, Samoans, the Hawaiians, New Zealand, when they would row up on friendly visit, and this was after they all organized under King Kamehameha, the first king that kind of got everybody under one rule. And they would row up, these big warriors would extend arms, palms up, and they would reach out, and it was a friendly gesture. It was just a symbolic saying, hey, look, I'm not armed. Same thing with the handshake. It's, look, no handgun. It's a friendly visit. I'm not going to shoot you. And these big warriors would grab arms like this, and they would say, alo. Alo in Hawaiian, it means front or face or presence. And they would pull each other face to face, and they would share, ha! And ha is an onomatopoeia. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a breath. They call it a breath of life, right? It literally translates, HA in Hawaiian translates into spirit. And they believed if you shared breath, you shared spirit. It literally means, I welcome you with my spirit. All right, there's no formal word for goodbye, but they say aloha. I send you away with a blessing. I send you away with my spirit. Isn't that beautiful? The word Hawaii, same root word, Hawaii, W-A-I in Hawaiian, it means water. Hawaii, a place in the water that renews your spirit. A place in the water that brings life. Isn't that beautiful? If you do nothing else leaving here today, just go out and share some ha. And it's no accident laughter is ha-ha. And I made that up, but I think it fits, man. I think we need to laugh more. We need to bless each other more. You guys have certainly done that for me. So with that, I wish you all a fond aloha. God bless everybody. Thank you.